Alright, so what is this? This is a popular book review, I think, by Kieran Setiya in The Atlantic. So philosophy could have been a lot more fun. Two recent biographies of Plato and Diogenes show the divergent path Western thought could have taken. Yeah, Journal series, yeah. Our resident German-speaking chat member. Okay. Diogenes of Sinope, a beggar who lived on the streets of Athens in the 4th century BC, has been hailed as the progenitor of performance art and inspiration for the Occupy movement. Yeah, you can see this dated already. Occupy movement. And by the novelist James Carroll Oates, the first, some might claim the best, stand-up comic. What day is this? I don't know if we have a date on this one. Oh, no, it's 2023. So, okay. So, it's only last year. He was also a noted philosopher, yet his legacy doesn't lie in his written work, almost none of which survives, but in colorful anecdotes about his life recorded by contemporaries and compiled most prominently by his namesake, Diogenes Laertius, about 600 years later in Lives and Opinions of Eminent Philosophers. Diogenes' reputation rests on a gift for one-liners in the spirit of Groucho Marx. Flouting social norms, Diogenes was said to masturbate in the marketplace, responding to side-eyed glances with bemusement. If only one could do away hunger by rubbing one's stomach. Admonished for drinking in a bar, Diogenes shot back, "I also get my hair cut in a barber shop." Captured and sold into slavery, Diogenes was asked to list his skills. He replied, "Ruling over men," and told the herald, "Spread the word in case anyone wants to buy himself a master." Yeah, see, that's fun. Philosophy is notoriously difficult to define, but I can't speak. But you may wonder if this really counts. When we think about the birth of Western philosophy, we tend to think of Diogenes' contemporary, Plato, a systematic theorist who founded an academy and whose written dialogues, clocking in at more than 500,000 words, have been preserved in full. Plato was wealthy and well-connected. He did not live in a large ceramic jar, owning no more than a cloak, a stick, and a knapsack, as Diogenes is said to have done. When he saw a boy drinking from the hollow of his own hand, Diogenes threw away his cup. It was superfluous. I mean, again, how you interpret the word. Like, he says he was outdid by a kid in, like, sort of, the text is something like efficiency or, something like that. It doesn't really mean superfluous. Like, I don't think that's what the text is. It was like he was outdone by the kid in, what's the word for frugality? Frugality, I think, is more like what it was. So, like, frugality and superfluous don't mean the same thing exactly. So it's already, like, this is already an interpretation of what's going on. But then again, I don't read the Greek. I don't know what exactly the word means for, like, in ancient sort of context. But, like, it's interpreted, as I was reading, it's more like frugality. I was thinking about this story, actually. I find it kind of interesting. All right. How could Western philosophy in its infancy encompass such divergent figures? On one side, a scholar of metaphysics who was a member of the Athenian 1%, and on the other, a mendicant gadfly without political capital, a street performer known for his verbal wit, an activist who dismissed Plato's discourse as a waste of time. Newly published books about the lives of Plato and Diogenes send us back to a time when philosophy did not know what it would grow up to be. Now, Kieran Setiya knows the history here. I don't think he's, like, purposefully saying silly things, but, like, the idea that, like, there was this, like, grand split between Plato and Diogenes. Well, of course, Socrates came first, and Socrates is way more like Diogenes than Plato is like Socrates. Like, Plato and Diogenes are probably much closer in sort of temperament than Plato is to either of them. Of course, Plato is more like Socrates than he is like Diogenes, but Diogenes and Socrates are way closer than I feel that Socrates and Plato are. So it's like, the fact that, like, they were saying, like, Kieran here is like, okay, how could, like, we have had this grand split? Well, the split already existed. It's Plato who may have been the weird one in this group. It's not Diogenes, because Diogenes is more like Socrates than Plato is. Okay. A remarkable fact about Robin Waterfield's Plato of Athens is that it's the first full-length biography of Plato ever published. Could I put this in diagram form? Probably. I know that's a joke, but like... So it's like Plato, Diogenes, and like this is like Socrates is over here. And these two are more like this. And like Plato's over here, and he's kind of on his own like metaphysical like island. So there's your see, I circled them. You can see it in this two-dimensional representation there. Lumpy. See that? I can do it. So yeah. But like that's the idea. It's like we had this like sort of split between like the way that Kieran is doing it. It's like that's not exactly how the history was. What would it mean to be a 21st century Diogenes, you wonder? I'm committed. I call myself a neo-cynic, Latvian Jesus. I mean, granted, like you could always interpret like different things he was doing in different ways, like to be a 21st century Diogenes or cynic. The concept that we're gonna like no one is like strictly an Aristotelian anymore. Of course there are people who claim to be Aristotelian, but like 2,000 years has happened, more than 2,000 years has happened between the death of Aristotle and now, and so like no one is like strictly Aristotelian. You take on bits of their philosophy that you think are important, and so like the not like so much frugality of like living, but like the frugality of ideas I think is important. So I'm not like stoic in that I think only about like, oh, my the way I perceive the world is all that's important. I think more like the frugality of ideas is important. There's no reason why we should be having these grand metaphysics, and that's a common refrain in like 20th century philosophy. It's like, or like recent philosophy is like, you have to get rid of metaphysics. I don't want to get rid of metaphysics. I just don't want to have excessive metaphysics. And so it's like this sort of frugality of thought I think is important. And so it's like, what do you pick and choose from the ancient philosophers that you want to take on? Yeah. Viper says, what do you mean, strange-tongued foreigner? Bring to the Agora me? The Agora, I'm going to rename it X. Oh, God. Latvian Jesus, what's the more boiled down idea to carry on? I mean, again, you could ask my opinion, but I'm not like the end all be all of like cynicism or Diogenes. But I think like you should not be having excessive like metaphysics. Like, and if there's any sort of technology that you could be living without, like you don't need a cell phone to live. You could get by without one nowadays still. But like, and I don't mean something like your insulin pump. Like if you need your insulin pump to live because you're going to die because you don't have insulin, that doesn't count. If you have like any sort of conventional technology that you don't need to live, and you like, if you completely freak out when you like lose your phone and you really can't function anymore, that's a problem. You should still be able to function without your phone. Like if you are completely like paralyzed without your phone, I think that's a problem. And so that's not good. So it's like, I have a similar relationship to technology. Like he was throwing away the cup. I could throw away my phone. I could get by without it. I don't need that. And so it's like, well, rethink your relationship to the world if you are like so dependent on like certain technologies that you wouldn't be able to get by, but like they really aren't that important to your life. Now, again, like I'm not saying medical technologies that you need to live, like say you insulin or you have to take some pills, like, or else you'll lose your mind. Like, don't stop taking your pills. But like, if you are using like your like video games and you're addicted to them, it's like, well, that's not a good thing. You should be able to not have to play the video games. Viper says, I disagree with you practically, but not theoretically. Yeah, this is a theoretical thing, of course. I'm not getting rid of my phone. You can't go far without your phone. My bus pass is on it. Yeah. But like you could though, you could get a different bus pass, Lumpy. You would be okay. But like I think like if you're going to completely lose your mind, because I told the story a few weeks ago. I ran into a friend from high school I know, middle school even. Ivan, I didn't even see you were on. What's going on? How you doing, Ivan? Thanks for the raid. How was your vacation, by the way? Thanks for the raid. Let's give Ivan a shout out. I did not know you. I did not see your go live message, which is interesting. Thank you for the follow. How you doing? How's your how's your stream? What did you chat about? You can't access your bank without your phone two-factor authentication. See, that's fine. Like, but this is the thing. You could take your money out of the bank and use cash. even if that's hard nowadays, yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing. We're getting to a spot where the technology is necessary, Vipers, but again, you would not, like, you could take the money out of the bank. Vacation was cool. Nope, you can't take the money out of the bank. What is it? All you have all your money in Bitcoin now or something? Twitch increased the price. Yeah, it will never sub to anyone. Yeah, I know. I saw that today. And definitely never sub on your phone or on the mobile devices. On the site, it's still cheaper as I understand it. But on mobile, they charge you a premium for buying a sub on a phone, and they've always done this, but they've increased it by like an extra $1. It's terrible. Lots of cakes, patisseries, and coffee, palaces, museums, that sort of thing. Oh, that sounds lovely. Sounds lovely. You whispered me the fan art link for the day. Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you. I was not looking over here. Yeah, we just been reading some more light stuff today. I'm just fine. We got some AI art for today. Oh, fun. Look at this. Do we have the prompts here? Like, who's playing this game? I'm not sure. Viper says the bank is required to get stuff paid into. Recurring debits are the norm for so much, and they've closed all local branches near me because of mobile banking. Yeah, see, it would get increasingly hard now to live without one. But again, this is the sort of thing I'm saying. It's not that, like, if you need it to live in society, that's not the sort of thing I'm saying. I'm saying basically you should be able to get rid of anything that, like, society doesn't require of you to get by. Because if you literally can't acquire food without it, like I was saying, like, it's medicine, like you need your medicine to survive, that's fine. But if you're going to freak out about, like, say, a video game, that's not healthy. Like, if you can't get by without getting your little click, your video game on your phone, then I think it's a problem. Yeah. Your dollar got no value. Australia's $8.99. Yeah, it's bad. It's getting bad. Karl Marx and Groucho Marx. Okay, I wasn't quite sure who this was on the left. Yeah, you can see the Groucho going on though. And we got a bunch of these. Looks like Freud or like Einstein in the background. You did not visit any strip clubs. I mean, were you performing or? Actually, I don't know. Yeah, you would say that though. That's true. Yeah, and these guys are. Was he sharing a cigarette there with the king? Interesting. Good old Groucho Marx. That's cute. It's like me watching some sort of thing here. We go into like the philosophers now. It's Tol Rostiel te motizatiding are well in Polonks. Yes, exactly. Okay, this is kind of cool. Anyway, if Ivan, you got to go do post-stream things, feel free to head off or whatever. But if you want to stick around, always cool. Good to have you. Thank you again for the raid. Yeah, thank you, Cinsemiax, for the art. This is like a bunch of like little cutesy like games we've got going on here. So, although it looks like Groucho really has Carl's number in terms of chess. Okay, cool. Where were we? Oh, what's up, Final Fugu? How you doing? Yeah, you got, yes, bon appetit. What are you going to eat anyway? Okay, a remarkable fact about Robert Waterfield's Plato of Athens is that it's the first full-length biography of Plato ever published. I've read smaller biographies of him, but yeah, not full-length. Ooh, pasta. Pasta good. I had that for lunch today. The reason for this neglect are partly historiographic. Though Plato's dialogues survive, they barely mention him. Yeah, I mean, he wrote about Socrates. He didn't talk about himself. Only 374 kilowatts used to make those images. That's nothing. We have plenty of energy, right, Vipers? We have the giant nuclear reactor in the sky. Okay, we have no official Athenian records of his life, and the earliest short biographies were set down centuries later. But that's not the whole story. We also know very little about Diogenes of Sinope, yet he's had 3 biographies to date. The problem with Plato is that he was not much fun. Plato's life, like the life of most career academics, was relatively dull. The exception is a series of misadventures in international politics described at length in a Platonic letter most scholars now regard as apocryphal. Waterfield's life of Plato gains vitality by arguing that this letter is in fact authentic. We'll come back to the political intrigue, but apart from that, Waterfield's portrait of Plato is traditional. He was born around 424 to 423 during the Peloponnesian War, but was too young to fight in it. When the war ended, the victorious Spartans imposed on Athens the rulership of the 30 tyrants, with Plato's relative Critias, like him an admirer of Socrates, among them. The regime was ruthless and unstable. It was overthrown within 8 months, and Athenian democracy was restored. 4 years later, Socrates was executed for impiety, and Plato withdrew from public life. He had toyed with becoming a poet before committing to philosophy, traveling to Megara to visit the Socratic philosopher Euclides around 396. On his return to Athens, Plato likely fought in the Corinthian War. In the peace that followed, he visited Pythagoreans in what is now southern Italy and met political leaders in Syracuse before founding the academy in a park on the outskirts of Athens in 383. There he taught until his death in 348 to 7. What you think you know about Plato's philosophy is probably right. He is famous for believing in abstract immaterial forms, ideals of justice, beauty, and the good that exists outside of space and time. For Plato, the material world was second-rate and the soul was immortal. Like every Socratic philosopher, Plato held that living well is more about the virtues of justice, temperance, and courage than honor or pleasure or wealth. By the time he founded the academy, Plato was already well known, but he was not a public philosopher. Waterfield finds evidence of 2 popular appearances, one a reading of Plato's dialogue, Phaedo, during which we're told the rest of the audience drifted away and only Aristotle remained to the end. Yeah, so as per usual, public philosophy is boring as fuck usually. I appreciate all you guys still being here. The other was a lecture on the good. It did not go well. Quote, the audience for the lecture came in the expectation that Plato would talk about human goods such as health, wealth, and status, and would give them a recipe for the good life. Instead, they were treated to abstract and perplexing talk about mathematics, numbers, geometry, astronomy, and finally the argument that the good is one. End quote. Waterfield leaps to Plato's defense, discounting the dig about the dialogue as malicious gossip, and complaining that for Plato, the good is not just a moral but a metaphysical concept. Quote, the transcendent source of all value in the world and the ultimate cause of all things. End quote. One cannot comprehend how one should live without engaging in abstruse metaphysics, but it's easy to sympathize with an audience who wanted a TED Talk and got a textbook instead. Despite this cold reception, Plato invented what we call the discipline of philosophy. See, this is just Platonic propaganda. This I don't appreciate. Like, this is what we call the discipline of philosophy, but this is just the Platonists and the Aristotelians. That's just their propaganda. Fuck them. So. He did not do this alone. Despite their disagreements, the Socratics flooded the market with their books, writing scores of philosophical works in the 40 or so years after Socrates' death, attempting to sweep aside anyone else's claim to be an educator. Waterfield's narrative is compelling, but is it true? Was Plato Socrates' heir apparent? They were very different people. Yeah, see, this is what I was saying earlier. The idea that Plato was like Socrates is like, no, they were very different. Socrates was not wealthy, he wrote nothing, and he did not establish a school. Instead, he conversed in the marketplace, often with satirical wit, the quintessential public philosopher. When we adopt a wider lens, the history looks different too. The pre-Socratics were metaphysicians arguing that all is in flux, or that all is one, or that all is made of water. For Socrates, the urgent question was not metaphysical but ethical. How ought we to live? Plato inherited this question but argued that we need metaphysics to answer it, synthesizing Socrates with the pre-Socratic tradition. The result was philosophy as it comes down to us today, dense, discursive, theoretical. But this wasn't predetermined. The most important Socratic philosopher besides Plato was Antisthenes. Waterfield presents him as a fellow traveler, but his critique of Platonic philosophy was hardly affable. The title of his lost dialogue, Sathon, meaning prick, is a filthy rip on Plato's name, Platon. Yeah, so the guy was like insulting Plato. I did not know that. According to tradition, Antisthenes taught Diogenes. They were the original cynics, after Kynikos or dog-like, on the account of their shameless behavior, shitting, pissing, and masturbating in public. Seen in this light, Diogenes' performative philosophy, his willful demolition of social norms, was a plea for the grounded pragmatism of Socrates over Plato's airy theorizing. If the most important thing in life is pursuit of virtue, Diogenes screams, why don't we act like it? And see, this is what I was saying earlier. this was a setup on Kieran's part, saying, well, we've got Plato and Diogenes, but really, if you go back just one generation of Socrates, it looks like it's more Socrates and Diogenes, and Plato is the weirdo in this group. He's the, well, he is the throwback, as Setiya is saying here. Plato is the throwback to the ancient metaphysician, or the pre-Socratic metaphysicians. Okay. Like every mythic hero, Diogenes has an origin story that may or may not be true. As told in the French classicist Jean-Manuel Robinot's biography, The Dangerous Life and Ideas of Diogenes the Cynic, newly translated by Malcolm de Beauvoir, the oracle of Apollo cryptically instructed Diogenes to debase the currency. He returned to Sinope and, with his father Hicasius, an official money changer, did just that. One or both were involved in financial fraud. Fleeing prosecution, Diogenes was exiled from Sinope. And remember, what's his name? Thales is also, all these people dabbled in finance. There's an old story about Thales and how he got a little bit of money because he studied the world. He was a little bit like, philosophers like looking at the world. He realized there was going to be a good harvest this year. And he took out loans on all the all the olive presses for making olive oil. And when it was a good harvest, people needed to rent the olive oils, and he resold them at a higher price and made a lot of money that year. And the idea, so this was the first options trading that ever happened, as far as we know, in the Western world, was when Thales put the deposit down early and then resold the contracts at a much higher rate. That Stephen Fry speech was really soothing. Thank you, Vipers. Okay, there we go. So, yeah. So, all these guys seem to be a little bit funky with money. Alright, so fleeing prosecution, Diogenes was exiled from Sinope. With the benefit of hindsight, he saw that only fools take oracles literally. His philosophical task was to debase the currency of convention by living in accord with human nature. Diogenes likely washed up in Athens in the mid 360s, around the same time as a teenage Aristotle. At this point, Plato was nearly 60 and Antisthenes around 80, if indeed he was still alive. Diogenes was influenced by Antisthenes, but may have arrived too late to meet him. What we know of Diogenes' philosophy has been preserved in stories about his life. His philosophical interactions were often comic. When Plato defined man as a featherless biped, so it said, Diogenes brought a plucked chicken to the door of the academy. While a philosopher was arguing that motion is unreal, Diogenes got up and walked away. Yeah, those were the Zeno's paradoxes. So it's like you've got these people were talking about paradoxes of Zeno that you can't move, but you need the whole argumentation to make it work. Plus, clearly you get up, you walk away. It's a counterexample. Proof by walking. Performances like these are essentially critical. See, this is the other thing. These are demonstrations. Even now, this history of demonstrations comes down to it. QED at the end of proof is quod erat demonstratum. What was meant to be shown. What was meant to be performed. Have a good night, Lumpy, and, squeeze the muffin tight, I guess. Philosophy and comedy share a disruptive spirit, but Diogenes had convictions too. What he stood for at heart was the aspirations to live as the Socratics claimed to believe one should. For Socrates, famously, the unexamined life was not worth living. Diogenes went one step further. To manage our lives properly, he said, we need either reason or a rope. His brash performance of poverty showed how to be self-sufficient with next to nothing by limiting one's desires. See, and this is what the Stoics went a little overboard on. He was like this, but you don't have to be like this insanely. In politics, Diogenes criticized war between nations and the institution of private property, calling himself a citizen of the world. Yeah, this is the first use of the word cosmopolitan. Politicos of the cosmos. Cosmo, like the world, the cosmic politics. So you're not tied to a particular city-state, which is where you got your political protection and military identity back in the day. So it's like you're saying, I'm not American, I'm cosmopolitan. So that would be denying my U.S. citizenship if I were to do that. Okay. If Diogenes asked how one can live with integrity in an unjust world, the answer we have is not in what he wrote, but in what he did. Instead of musing on the metaphysics of justice within the walls of an academy complicit in wealth and power, Diogenes exposed injustice and its obfuscation, demonstrating by example that what seems natural or inevitable is not. Life can be examined not just in theory, but in practice, through trials of life that widen our conception of what is possible or desirable, as Diogenes did. Plato scorned this style of Socratic philosophy. When someone asked him, "What sort of man do you consider Diogenes to be?" he replied, "Socrates gone mad." By and large, the tradition has shared in this opinion. Western philosophy has been described as a series of footnotes to Plato. Yes, but these are, Platonic jerk-face propagandists. No one calls it a cacophony of callbacks to Diogenes. But it is to some extent an accident of history that the critical examination of society in pointed jokes, performance art, or radical experiments in living is not counted as philosophy. For Diogenes, moral philosophy was an inescapable part of life, implicit in everything we do, not an esoteric subject of research. The question how to live is one we cannot help but ask, and we answer it in practice every day. This goes for Plato too. He may have been a metaphysician, but Plato had a life to live. His practical ambitions were political, and he wrote more about politics than any other topic. Taken together, Republic and Laws, both focused on political philosophy, make up nearly 40% of his collected works. The most arresting chapter of Waterfield's book treats the seventh Platonic letter as Plato's apology, recounting his doomed attempt to transform Dionysus II, the tyrannical ruler of Syracuse, into something like a philosopher king. Yeah, so apparently I had heard this story before, was that Plato tried to actually go rule a country, and he went over here, and Dionysus I don't think took too well to this. Plato had visited Syracuse once before in 384, making a convert of Dion, a trusted advisor of Dionysus I. Dion persuaded Dionysus II to invite Plato back to Syracuse in 366. It was an offer Plato could not refuse. It would have caused me acute embarrassment to find myself to be an absolute nothing more than a pure theorist, reads the seventh letter, unwilling to take in hand any practical task. The trip was a disaster. With Dion, Plato hoped to make the Syracuse a constitutional monarchy, but Dionysus did not trust them, banishing Dion from the city. Plato then fled. When Dionysus invited him again in 363, professing no interest in philosophy, Plato stalled for 2 years before agreeing to come. First thing he did when he arrived was to test Dionysus' sincerity. The tyrant failed miserably. His philosophy was no more than skin deep, like a suntan, writes Waterfield, borrowing a simile from the seventh letter. It was only with the help from a powerful friend that Plato was able to escape from Syracuse and return to Athens humiliated. Yeah, so he went over there. He thought he would get he'd be in power there. He'd be like the advisor running things, and the guy threw him in jail is the story. Basically, he kept Plato prisoner, and so then his rich friends had to bail him out, basically. The Plato of the seventh letter is politically naive and strategically inept, a warning to academics who hope to see their ideas in action. Diogenes was reputedly scathing. When Plato saw him washing vegetables, the story goes, Plato quietly remarked, "If you paid court to Dionysus, you wouldn't need to do that," to which Diogenes replied, "Yes, and if you washed vegetables, you wouldn't need to pay court to Dionysus." Yeah, it's if you can wash your own food, you don't have to kiss other people's asses. It's that's fair. Diogenes was not impressed by wealth and power. Perhaps the most famous anecdote about him involves Alexander the Great, who came to meet him in Corinth. While the philosopher was sunbathing, Alexander approached him and asked, "Ask whatever you desire," to which Diogenes replied, "Stand out of my light." Diogenes died in poverty in the late 320s of causes unknown, rumors including food poisoning, self-asphyxiation, deadly fever, and old age. He asked that his body not be buried, but it probably was. Plato, by contrast, came from money, and his funeral was marked by a procession. Waterfield is oddly sanguine about this. Quote, "Plato's wealth was all to the good," end quote. He writes, quote, "It gave him leisure time. Philosophy would be poorer if Plato had been poor." End quote. Yeah, see, this is again this Western philosophy apologism. I don't like this. Aziz Light. Yeah. Omnifitus, I wish I had one rich friend like that. Yeah. This is still how a lot of things go nowadays. You have to have angel investors. You need a patron. And a lot of things in our Western society is not that different from how it was then. It would be nice, but a lot of these, even up until very recent times, you would have to basically be at some rich person's, like in their care to like get anything done. So, but yeah, I mean, and nowadays, who has money? Like, I don't know any people that have like, I don't know any people who are rich like that. So it's like, I wish well, here's a question. If I had some rich buddy who was, kind of an asshole, but like had a bunch of money, would I take it, for, it depends how much money. It's like, yeah. Would I sit around, like, teach them some bullshit and make them feel like they were like smart shit? Like, maybe I would. I don't know. It depends how much money. You gotta remember, it's how Descartes died. Descartes got a job tutoring some princess because, like, they were like, Descartes, the great philosopher, come and do this. And the princess, I think, maybe it was a queen, I forget, was like a really early morning person, and Descartes was a late night person. And after 6 months of having to wake up and teach class at 6 a.m., he died. Like, he literally was teaching at 6 a.m. because that's when they wanted to talk philosophy, and it killed Descartes. So it's like, but he went and lived at the court of some, like, king or queen or whatever it was. And, yeah, that's how, like, that was the end of Descartes. Mr. Epstein. Yeah, seriously. But, yeah, I mean, you joke, but there was a very, like, was it the MIT Media Lab? Like, this very, very well-regarded research lab at MIT was getting many, many millions of dollars from Epstein. And, they were like, oh, we didn't know where their money was coming from, but, like, they kind of must have known some of the weirdness around Epstein. And so, like, this is a few years ago now. Like, this was coming out, like, when Epstein was getting arrested or whatever. This is before, like, he died, before all that. But, like, where his money was going and, like, the people that he was paying off was, yeah, that's a tough situation for them. Yeah, it was many millions of dollars. And it was like no one was thinking that any weirdness was happening at the MIT Media Lab, but they had to, like, give the money away because it was just way too embarrassing. Be like, oh yeah, this is like, rich people like raping kids and they're giving him money and then you're taking that money. It's like, that's not how you should be funding like the MIT Media Lab. I think it was MIT. I shouldn't say that if it's not them, but I'm pretty sure it was. MIT Media Lab, Epstein. It was MIT, yeah. But I won't even get it wrong. Yeah, MIT Media Lab. Here we go. So, okay. This is correct. Thank you, chat. I didn't want to be associating people with Jeffrey Epstein that did not deserve it, but like this was the case. So, but you got to remember, like, very little bit of money in this world is clean, especially in capitalism. There might not be any like purely clean money. So it's like everything you do is like, I mean, this is Twitch. It's owned by Amazon. I mean, we're paying Jeffrey Bezos like to be here. So like I'm working for Jeffrey Bezos at the moment. So it's like nothing is like, there's no like clean money that's going through this place. So it's all a question what you want to do and like how much of I could not stream like this without Twitch. And so it's like, well, do I want to make Jeffrey Bezos richer and Amazon richer and have more power in like the world right now? Not in particular. But like, again, to get anything done, you have to make concessions. Yeah, techno-feudalism, exactly. Sell pizza, now that's clean money? Yeah. Well, I mean, where's that cheese coming from? Are those like well-raised cows? I don't know. The only ethical consumption under capitalism is cunnilingus, accurate, unless you're a former president, yeah. Yeah, depends which president, I guess. Yeah, we could go into that if, I mean, isn't Clinton set to speak tonight? Or was he speaking of oral sex? Jeffrey Preston Bezos, yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, how much money and like what kind of people would I throw in with for a little bit more money and freedom? I don't know, but like it's always in the back of my head. Should I go get myself a PhD funding? Like I could go back to a school and be like, I'll write you a nice PhD essay, thesis or whatever, or I'll get some papers published if you give me money for a few years. Now, there are better and worse universities that I could go to, of course. And it's like, well, who do I want to throw in with? And that's the question. Yeah, Jeffrey Preston Bezos Esquire. I mean, you get be excellent to each other. So, yeah, if we only had what's his name, the comedian, Rufus. If Rufus were around, we'd be all right. Rufus. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, again, this is like this excuse, like, oh yeah, it's okay that Plato was rich because we got better philosophy out of it. That's kind of like one of these fuck you rich people apologists. But again, who am I to say, like, everyone has if you are struggling to put food on the table and you have to work for some assholes, like, I understand, you need to eat, your family needs to eat. Don't worry about like who you're working for if you're going to starve. Like, what are you gonna do? So I was talking to a philosopher a while back, and she was like, I would never do anything like that. I would never publish philosophy under someone else's name to make money. I was like, I know she has money. She had money, like her family or whatever. And I was like, yeah, this guy was poor. Like, because I think I brought up the example of Bernoulli. So I think the hospital rule, I don't know how to say it correctly. The hospital rule, like, he wrote a textbook, and there's an important rule in mathematics that everyone learns. Basically, I think it's like college, like lower college level. You don't have to be very fancy at math to learn the hospital's rule. And you learn, the Hospital wrote this. No, Bernoulli ghost wrote that book for a bunch of money. Hospital was just some rich guy who wanted to, do something in mathematics and have his name remembered. But it was really Bernoulli, who's famous in his own right, of course, without it being Bernoulli's rule. He ghost wrote the book for a good amount of money so that he could put food on the table. It's like, whatever that was, because I don't think Bernoulli came from money. So it's like, how much money would it take for you to, like, sell your really good ideas and just be like, all right, fine, I'm going to get some money for this? Like, yeah, Bernoulli was poor. Like, Hospital was rich. So that's how it goes. Okay. So it gave him time. Philosophy would be poor if Plato had been poor, which is a nice short phrase, except it's followed by this quote: people from the working class in the fictional city-state republic are rigidly excluded from a share in the government on the grounds that their occupation makes it impossible for them to have the kind of lofty and long-term thoughts that are appropriate to political leaders. Yeah, exactly. So the poor can't really decide for themselves. So Plato's repressive hierarchical utopia is a dystopian regime. Yeah. So this is just fascism of the philosophers. So or the moneyed class who can think about stuff. It's always the fucking case. People, when they make these utopias, they put themselves in top. Yeah. Okay. How the history of philosophy and society might look if Diogenes had dethroned Plato is a difficult question to answer. I mean, this is the whole setup of this essay. It's very cute. There's no answer to it, but it's just like this is a clever framing of this essay here. And it's like, it goes back to the beginning. Again, they ignored Socrates and just made this between Diogenes and Plato. So it's like, yeah. So the kids, the students of Socrates. Diogenes did have students. He was a teacher of Crates who taught Zeno of Citium, the first Stoic. In this lineage, the contemporary revival of Stoicism as a lifestyle movement is a legacy of Diogenes at two removes. But like Plato, the ancient Stoics were metaphysicians. They were armed with a cosmology in which the divine mind, Zeus, ensures that everything works out for the best. Diogenes refused such I keep saying consolation, nor would he have warmed to well-connected Stoics such as Seneca, a political advisor to Nero, or the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Viper says that's a good point. The only way to design a utopia is to put yourself in the lowest of the lower classes. I mean, maybe. I mean, they always say, like, the person who least deserve, like, the people in power are the ones who least should have it, or the people who don't want power are the ones that are the only ones that would be good at it. So it's like the people who don't want power, like the ones that are like avoiding it, shunning it, going to the lowest classes, those are the people that really should be in charge. I mean, this is a well-known refrain. Like anyone who, the joke in the United States is anyone who could actually become president should absolutely never be president in the United States. You don't agree with that? No. You think it's the opposite? Well, what do you, well, what, yeah, how do you design a utopia? I don't know any that like work personally, like properly. They're all like nice in theory, but we haven't actually pulled anything off yet. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. You think our morality is determined by our place on the social ladder? Oh, that's fair. It's like, yeah. So what happens is like we're more socially determined than that. That's a fair point. I mean, that's a good point. I don't know, like I don't do enough political philosophy. I don't think about that. I haven't really thought hard, like long and hard about this enough to deal with like what actually should be how society is set up. Yeah, power corrupts, and that's fair. It's like there is something about the way society is set up that does affect the person, and then that will change how they deal with people, like and how they rule. Okay. Okay, the true heirs of Diogenes Cynic are activists, thinkers, and performance outside of academic philosophy. Hey, I'm outside academic philosophy. They are figures such as Gerard Winstanley, who tried to build a communist utopia in the Civil War England 200 years before Karl Marx, Henry David Thoreau, who aspired to live deliberately, fronting only the essential facts of life, and Greta Thunberg, who leads school strikes for climate action. Diogenes' heirs are writers who use philosophy to criticize our lives but are not professional philosophers, like Jenny Odell, whose best-selling book, How to Do Nothing, cites Diogenes as an influence. They are artists who imagine alternative communities, as Ragnar Kjartansson does in The Visitors, a multi-channel video installation in which a group of friends performing threads of a repetitive, wistful song in separate rooms come together as one. They are comedians who whose work protests the status quo. Dave Chappelle releasing 846 after the murder of George Floyd. Michelle Wolf at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Sacha Baron Cohen exposing bigotry with the comic characters like Borat. Diogenes was hardly unreflective. To one who said, "I'm ill-suited to philosophy," he replied, "Then why live at all if you have no interest in living well?" But his reflection was urgent: how to live in the world as it is today. Asked why people care more about poverty than philosophy, Diogenes quipped, because they expect that they become lame and blind, but never that they will become philosophers. It's fair. Our world would be a better place if we acknowledged that we might become both. There we go. Yeah, so people are gonna do with what they like, someone got fired. I didn't know them at work. There was an area where there's like, a donation box. And apparently they got caught stealing from the donation box. Of all the stupid shit, like they got caught stealing $5 or something from like this donation box in this one area. Like people steal or they do stuff what they see. It's the old if you're like, how do you covet? You covet what you see every day. It's like this is like people don't like your world consists like what you're dealing with around you. You can deal with philosophy around you. It's like how you live well. That's dealing with yourself. But again, like this person got fired for stealing like $5 from a donation box, like because they got caught thieving like donated money. Like it's stupid, and it was for like nothing. So I mean, maybe they had been stealing many times and they thought they'd get away with it, and so this was just the latest $5. But like we were like some people were talking about it today, and they were like, well, they got caught on the security camera. I was like, look, how did they catch this person so perfectly on the security camera? There's a lot of security cameras around. Why did they catch us? Like, was someone looking at this? Like, they got ratted out, or someone saw, and so someone told them to look at this time. Nice reference to a 1991 movie there. Thank you. I forgot already what I did, but I know I did reference something. Oh yeah, Silence of the Lambs. So it's like, how do you live is an important question, but you also see like injury, your physical infirmities are also part of your life. So it's like, it's not that like, so people realize that they might become lame and blind, but not that they will have to like really consider how to live, because again, most people under our societies are struggling just to, have everyday essentials. And so it's the everyday distractions. If people did have more time, or they made time to think about stuff, then they would be philosophers. But like, again, you have to be like an idiot like me and have a shit job so you have time to go like stream on Twitch. We are all only temporarily able-bodied. Yeah, and so I think that's part of what is wrong with Diogenes' joke here, is because everyone sees like old folks and how they get like, your body breaks down. You only see so many philosophers around. And so it's like everyone expects that they become lame and blind for good fucking reason, but never that they will become philosophers. Well, I mean, how many of them do you really see around? Now, you do have a question about how to live well, but in the societies, most of the people who are living well have a lot of money, or at least they look like they're living well. It's easier to show off that you're living well if you have a lot of money, and you take only pictures when you're like Instagram worthy pictures. So that's part of it. Okay, anyway, we can do a little review of this. I don't know if we need to review this. This was yeah, I don't know if we need to review this. I mean, chat, do you want to review this? I'll put the screen up. But like, this is the question. Throw your review, and if you thought it was fun or like particularly good, brain dance, scream for existential drama, or roast deep ancient ideas, nog knife for slicing and dicing arguments. I mean, this was public philosophy, not too slicing and dicing. There were a few arguments though in there. Nog navel, only for academics, again, public philosophy. Nog turd, all style, no substance, and nog grapes, for big claims that shrivel up. Then of course there's the global vote yay, vote nay, and vote meh, if you just want to like give general things. And as always, I do calculate some value off this. The ones in green at the top are make the score go up. The ones in red make it go down. And same with vote yay goes up, vote nay goes down, vote meh pushes everything towards the middle. Yeah. So again, like the setup here was all contrivance. Like Diogenes would have been very angry at the setup here because the whole setup of this essay was a contrivance. Now, was that a bad thing? In this case, I'd say not really. This was a nice way to set up a discussion about this sort of stuff. What's up, Corwin? Show it. Man, STDs are just ruin the fun of sex a lot. I want to say the key to old age is laying pipe. Yeah, but it's never going to work like that. Well, that's why we have condoms. But yeah. Viper says, if we want to know how to live well, we should probably ask the girl from the ring. Yeah, I mean, she might know something about that. So, who knows? Oh, I was thinking of, wait, is that the right movie? Or am I thinking about the wrong one? I forget. Maybe I'm thinking about the wrong movie there, but I don't know. So it's like, yeah. And this may just also be a terminological problem with, philosophy. What we call philosophy happens to be what we, talk about in academic settings. That may not be fair. Like, that may just be like academic philosophy is what we call philosophy mostly. But that's also like this author said, other people are doing important work that could be considered philosophical. So yeah. Oh yeah, The Ring is one. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, talk about older movies now. Man, what was that lady's name in the movie? She was so cute. Naomi or something? Yeah. So, oh man, I was watching Tank Girl. Yeah, so Vipers thought it was not good. Naomi Watts. I was watching Tank Girl years ago. And I was like, they had the main character. And like, that was Tank Girl. And then she had this friend. I was like, who the hell is that friend? Like, that girl is just like fascinating. And it was Naomi Watts. Like, a young Naomi Watts was in Tank Girl. It's like, god damn. Okay. Yeah, so let's see. What will we call this also? I'm going to give this a brain dance. I think it was fun. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll give it a grapes too. So it's going to be not grapes. It's going to be a very scared engineer girl. I think so. Like, maybe that's who she was in the movie. So, yeah. Yeah, like this is a sort of like, this is not it. Like, this essay is not uninteresting. It's like, it's not bad. It's a little bit of a skewed view of things, but as far as public philosophy goes, it's okay. Like, it's not got some bad ideas in it, but it's all very sort of, played up towards whatever Kieran wanted to say here. And like, again, is that really bad? No, it's okay. So, if anyone else wants to get their review in, like, feel free. It's just going to go up on the site. It doesn't really matter. And it's for a little bit of fun. So, is there anything else true? Yeah. and we're like, even the whole setup here is like heir apparent. Like, I guess, like, there was no philosophical school back then to say, oh, this is the heir of my school. Granted, when Plato was too old and giving up his academy, he didn't give it to Aristotle. Aristotle was like historically a fucking dickhead, apparently, and no one liked Aristotle. He was just really fucking smart. Tank Girl was a very strange film. Yeah, it was. It was based off a comic, and apparently it was like a counterculture comic. And as soon as they made the video, that made it like sort of pop culture-y, and people got like stopped liking Tank Girl after that, which I think is a funny historical thing. I mean, I was reading an article about it once a while back, and they were like, yeah, when they started making like, you know, pop media off of it, then it lost all of its like cool counterculture-ness, and it dropped out. Yeah. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, that Aristotle was a dickhead, and so Plato didn't give him the academy, and that's why Aristotle founded the Lyceum in a different area, because, you know, he needed his own school. But kind of sad. Yeah, the history around Aristotle, again, like Plato had money, but like Aristotle was like rich kid money, and he wasn't just like wealthy. He was rich kid money. He was a dick, and he also was perfectly happy to whereas Plato would try once or twice to go and, like, you know, do this story where he's gonna go try and, like, you know, set up a place where the philosophers would be in charge. Aristotle would just go work for whoever would pay him. He was more mercenary, and so people really disliked him because he was working for some very shitty people at different times. And there's an ancient story where one of the dictators that Aristotle was working for put up a statue of Aristotle in his hometown. So imagine you have a statue of yourself put up in your hometown. When the dictator fell, the hometown people apparently smashed the statue and threw the plaque with his name on it into the bottom of a well. And everyone was thinking, haha, I mean, that's kind of a silly story, until a few years ago, they found a plaque commemorating Aristotle at the bottom of a well in the area where he grew up. So it looks like that actually happened exactly as the ancient story said. We found the plaque at the bottom of a well. So it's like, no one liked Aristotle. He was just really smart and willing to, and mercenary in like who he worked for. So it's like these weird old ancient stories. That doesn't take away from his philosophy, but it also means, you know, maybe his ethics are a little bit suspect. So you have to always worry about that sort of stuff. But then again, everyone's ethics, like theoretical ethics, like in philosophy, not everyone is like perfect. But anyway.